Today on Sugar Spun Run, we will be making sourdough pancakes. Hey Sugar Spun bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. Sourdough pancakes are a great way to use up sourdough discard. Rather than tossing it in the trash, we can incorporate it into another recipe. It's less waste and the discard still has nutritional value, so I love using it wherever I can in baking. Now the first thing you want to do before you get started is go ahead and melt your butter. You'll need 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter for today's recipe. I like to melt that first thing, that way it has some time to cool down a little bit before we actually need it. Next, grab yourself a mixing bowl, and to this we are going to add 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and also a 1/2 teaspoon of table salt. We'll go ahead and whisk these ingredients together until they're nicely combined. And we'll just set this aside. Next, you'll want to grab yourself a separate mixing bowl, or in my case, I'm just going to use a large measuring cup because I'll be pouring this in a minute and I love that this already has a spout on it. The first ingredient you'll want to add to this is 1 cup of whole milk, and as you can see, mine is already in my mixing bowl / measuring cup. Next, of course, you'll need your sourdough discard, and today's recipe uses 1 cup of sourdough discard. This is what you pour off from your sourdough right before you feed it again. We'll add this into the bowl. And we are also going to need 2 large eggs. Now ideally these should be at room temperature. I'm just going to crack them in this dish here. And I'll add these to my measuring cup along with 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract for flavor. I'm just gonna grab my whisk from my flour mixture, and now I'm going to whisk everything together until this is nicely combined. I want to break up those egg yolks, get that sourdough and milk well combined. Ideally, your milk will be at room temperature before you begin, but if you don't feel patient and don't feel like waiting that long, that's fine. I sometimes skip this step too. It's just going to make your batter more clumpy. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. So now I'm going to add that butter that I melted a little bit earlier. Again, this is 4 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter, and while I am whisking, I'm going to drizzle that in just to help nicely incorporate it. Let me scrape in that butter because I don't like to leave any butter behind if I can help it. Now one thing you may run into, you may see some small clumps starting to form. This usually happens if your milk is cold or your eggs are too cold. It just starts to re-solidify the butter when it meets the mixture. Most likely you're going to end up with a little bit of re-solidified butter, but even if you end up with a lot, this recipe will still work. Again, it's just not going to be quite as smooth. Didn't mean to make a mess there. All right, now let's bring back our dry ingredients. And I'm just going to pour this right in here. You can see some of my butter separated to the top. That is fine. Now we are not going to go back to using our whisk at this point because anytime we are making a pancake batter, we want to be very gentle with it. We do not want to overmix. A whisk would definitely cause us to overmix things. So I'm just going to use a spatula, or you could use a wooden spoon, and I'm going to gently fold everything together until the wet and dry ingredients are well incorporated. Now this is a pretty thin batter, that's to be expected. What we are doing here at this stage is we're making sure everything's well combined. We want to make sure all of the flour is absorbed. But if you notice some lumps or some clumps and your flour is still all completely absorbed, that's fine. Don't overdo it, otherwise your pancakes will end up dense and flat or even rubbery. I'm just going to do a couple more turns with my spatula. And if you take a look at this, it still looks pretty lumpy when I lift up my spatula and look at the batter. I would not go any further than this though. This is actually perfect pancake batter, even though it's not really smooth and uniform. So I'm going to set this aside and we are going to head over to our stovetop. All right, over on the stovetop, you're going to want to grab yourself a skillet. I'm just using a small skillet today because I'll be cooking the pancakes one at a time. And I am going to turn my stovetop heat to medium. Now I don't want my pancakes to stick, of course, so I'm going to brush the pan with a little bit of olive oil, but you could use melted butter instead. That would also be fine. Or rather than brushing with melted butter, just put a small pat of butter in there and let the pan melt it and just swirl it around. That works great too. Don't add your batter yet though. We want to make sure this pan is nice and hot before we add our pancake batter to it. The best way to tell is you'll just hold your hand like about 2-3 inches above the pan, the surface of the pan, and you want to feel the heat radiating from that. Once you do, you know you are good to add your batter. It also takes a couple minutes for the pan to warm up, and it's good for the pancake batter to sit during that time because it thickens a little bit and is going to help lend itself to fluffier, thicker pancakes. All right, the first pancake always seems to come out a little bit funky, so let's get this one over with. You can of course make your pancakes as big or as small as you would like. I am going for some slightly larger pancakes today. I like to use about 1/2 to 2/3 cup of batter per pancake. Now I'm just going to portion it out with my ice cream scoop. Again, you can see the lumps in there, totally fine. A little bit more batter. Now, one of the trickiest parts of making pancakes is knowing when it's ready to flip. We want to see the bubbles in the batter rising to the surface and bursting. We also want to see that the edges of the pancake are beginning to look cooked. Exactly how long this takes is going to, of course, depend on your precise stovetop, your pan, many different factors. So it's best just to watch it and look for these visual cues. I also like to check that I can just slide my spatula underneath and the pancake should come up nicely. It shouldn't be sticking to the batter. The spatula should just kind of slide right in there. Now, as I said, the first pancake usually comes out a little bit funky, so I always use this as my gauge to know if I need to turn down my stovetop heat, turn it up, or let it sit longer before I try to flip it. Let's take a peek at this. The spatula is sliding under here nicely. Let's go ahead and flip it. This is actually a little bit darker than I typically like my pancakes. It's certainly not burnt, but now I know I'm going to just drop my heat down 1 notch and I'll check it a little bit sooner with the next pancake. Now we're just going to cook this on this side until the next side is golden brown, and we'll just check that by turning it a little bit with our spatula. Let's take a look. I want to see if you guys can see how that looks. It's never as pretty on the second side. But let's take this over to our plate. And then we will definitely want to make sure that we rebrush our pan with more oil or add more butter. Make sure the pan is hot again and we can add more pancake batter. Take a look at our pancake here. I think it's about ready to flip. Do a nice smooth flip. All right, this one looks pretty good. Let's take it over to our plate. And just repeat with the remainder of your pancake batter. That is how easy it is to make these sourdough discard pancakes. I hope you guys enjoyed today's recipe, and if you try this one, please leave me a comment and let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. That flavor is amazing. Is there a bug around here or something? Ideally, your milk would be at, ideally your room would be at, let that sit for a minute. Oh, I didn't get a plate.